started around 2004, I was for something like 20 years making work that was based around cabinets. And the Shakers were, of course, a big influence. Because of their incredible simplicity and their incredible proportions, and that something that was so plain and done for reasons that, as far as I know, were not particularly aesthetic, end up having this incredible power. The thing that I was trying to do when I was making cabinets, and the cabinets that I was making were false cabinets, you couldn't open them and they didn't have handles on it. I was working at that point with this very, very thin definition vase as something that is non-functional. That's obviously gone by the board because you could sit on the benches. What I was trying to do with the cabinets, the thing that I described when I was working with the proportions, was that I was trying to end up with something that looked completely ordinary and straightforward, but had this uncomfortable undertone, which is one way of describing the way I feel about the society we live in. And so the Shakers they don't have the uncomfortable undertone, but the shaker cabinets have something that is more than just a cabinet. You look at these things and you go, that's not just a piece of wood, it's some jam jars. So that's the reason for the cabinets, and I particularly did wall cabinets, and I also particularly made installations, and that's another whole 1 hour lecture about why I was doing installations. But I love the shaker installations, and this cabinet obviously was built in at some point because there's this unpainted piece here, so this is sort of referring to that part of my interest. Similar to, for similar reasons I'm interested in the boxes that are behind you guys over there, this central box and the wall cabinet, the notion that there's something that's, one of the reasons I'm interested in these things now is the very redundancy of them. If you're somebody like me who's trying to make art out of furniture, it's kind of hard because people just use it and that's fine. And then there are people who regard themselves as being artists who make furniture and make stuff that is wacky, that displays itself as being furniture. So I rather like the benches, I end up being attracted to things that we are familiar with, that we know, but actually no longer have a kind of place in our lives. In addition to that, I have to admit this. I teach woodworking in colleges, and one of the projects I give my students is to make a box that describes its contents. So I've started trying to do it myself, and it's quite hard. So hence the boxes. The table and the bed here I measured both of these, and this is the beginning of the next project that I'm not going to talk about. But that's why they're here. And then the peg thread behind here, I wanted something that described the ingenuity of the Shakers and the way that they think everything all the way through and come to these just incredibly elegant ways of doing things. And so I don't have to say anything about this if you can get David to take you up to the room upstairs here and show you how the pegs in the wall are threaded into the wall and hold the board up. So that it's not just that there's no glue, it's that they actually hold this unpainted board there, and when you've got to paint, you unthread the pegs, take the board off, slap a whole bunch of white paint across and put these things back on. Without all that wooden tape that we have to use these days.
And let me just mention, we don't even have to go upstairs. As you go out, the little vestibule for hanging your coats displays this exactly. You can see the threads in the
So this is a peg threader, so there's the peg and there's the thread, and it's just this beautifully made thing you just crank by hand, no electricity, no steam, no nothing.
So they didn't use nails? Or?
They did use nails, but when this is a peg for hanging your clothes on.
Oh, I see.
This is not a dowel.
That's
why David says if you go through that. So those pegs are a thread. I mean, I put the pegs in our bedroom at home, but they're glued in. And they're coming out. Dirty clothes hanging on, whereas these wouldn't. So. Any questions on this?
How heavy are those cabinets?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. Chloe, do you know?
No, I didn't actually lift them.
Apparently the one in the largest one is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And in fact, Boyd Hutchison and Jerry Grant, two of our staff people, had originally thought that it sat on the ground. And
I
then,
assumed it sounded.
yeah, and then they have decided since hanging it that it didn't hang. But it was heavy enough that they were going to install it with some sort of support
But
underneath
that
it.
should clean.
I walked in and it was hanging on the wall, so apparently they figured it out.
Could we talk about the use of what these were used for, these particular cabinets? You
You know,
know?
We don't know. Although most people probably can't see on the largest one here, there's a
This
peg
one's
on the side
Fire.
that says fire. So in typical fashion, there were very practical things in every room: a spit bucket, a fire bucket, wood boxes, all those sorts of things. And fire was a big concern. There were big fires at Melbourne. And in fact, you can see right behind me here, there was in fact fire hydrants installed here just after the Civil War throughout the community. So.
With their own distribution of water.
Correct, yeah, with their own reservoirs and distribution of water and so on. So they were very attuned to all of those health and safety issues. But what the other uses were for, we don't know.
But this was clearly built in,
Right.
because the paint only goes so far.
And it's so interesting because the Shaker peg rails is kind of one of those iconic features of Shaker physical architecture. And yet this is the very simple yet elegant tool that shows why it was not only practical, but so widely used.
Yeah, I also think the wooden threads themselves are just extraordinary things. I mean, they're larger than metal threads, and they're sort of they look like a representation or drawing of a thread, and yet they do an incredible job of holding to.
They go right into the wall, is that what you're saying, that the
What-
wall
actually,
would be?
I don't know if you can see it here. What it is that there'll be a batten in front of the wall that the peg is on, but that hole will be big enough for this thread to go straight through. Behind it, there's another piece of wood that this is then threaded into, so it holds this other batten on.
So there's a finished piece on top and a rougher piece behind it.
That's
kind of
finished in rough.
And it's very interesting because that's a lot like ship making devices from the wooden chip area.
Yeah. And even in their furniture, the Shakers used a similar methodology to make a lot of candle stand, like tea tables. The tops actually just screwed up right on.
I had a chance to see this room before, and I was so taken with your choice of that you really curated this room, and that you had walked through, who knows, 5,000 items and chosen these. And I so loved that you chose a bed, because we think of them as community, and this represents the individual that makes up the community, and we lose track of that except for the single bed.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah. Yeah, no double beds here.
No doubt.
Or queen, or king.
Oh, for nothing.
But they had wheels, they could move.
Yeah.
For cleaning.
For cleaning.
Let me just, you're welcome to stay and answer questions and so on. Let me remind you that there's a catalog in the gift shop. If you're interested in Francis signing it, rush over quickly and buy one, and then find him with a pen. If you're interested, and I hope you are, about other things here at Mount Lebanon, let me just mention, we are open Fridays through Mondays until Columbus Day. Today and every day we have tours at 11 and at 2:30, which are about the North family. And which is a very interesting part of Shaker history, because the North family that we're in was the missionary society to the rest of the world. So it had a lot of social reform movements and so on that started right here. They were vegetarian for 100 years, for example. And then at 1 o'clock there's a different tour that starts here, and you can do that today, and it walks down to the meeting house, and the North family Shakers walk down on Sundays and perform for the public in the meeting house. And then on the way back there's the story, before there was a community here, of Ann Lee, the founder of the Shakers, being mobbed by the townspeople and beaten and thrown from her carriage and so on. From a Shaker account, we actually read and show you exactly on the road where it happened, because it's measured off by the Shakers. So quite an interesting tour. In addition to that, we have another small exhibition on the Great Stone Barn project, a major restoration or stabilization we have going on, and it tells you about the history of that great building, which is really more a factory than a barn. And we have a great gift shop, which is mostly books. We're very interested in Shaker ideas, and so it has new books, it has used books for members, it has a lending library, it has loaded iPads with biographies of Shakers and so on, so we invite you to come and sit in there and spend some time. and then come back later in the year. We've got, these two exhibitions are open until August, help me out.
Nine.
11th.
11th, thank you. And then starting on August 29th and going through September 22nd, we kind of go from quiet to noisy. And we're showing Dan Graham's video installation called Rock My Religion, which draws a line between Ann Lee and Patti Smith. And it's about an hour-long video made in the 1980s, and it is wild and wonderful. And that'll be looping while the museum is open, again, that Friday through Monday period. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.